Hello and welcome to Widowed AF. You're here with me, I'm your host, Rosie Gilmoss. My guest today is Orla Blackburn. I know very little about Orla. I tend not to do too much digging on my guests prior to them coming on. Partly time constraints and partly because I quite like the authenticity of hearing their stories. It's not technically live, but it kind of is. And what I do know about Orla is that she hosts something called a Wids and Kids retreat. And I really want to know more because I get it. I get the idea behind it, like the support, the tribe, other people that get it. But apparently you even get a bit of a break yourself. So I will be quizzing her, don't you worry, and finding out some more details on that. But I'm going to let her into the studio now. So we'll hear from her. I'll speak to you in a moment. Orla, hello. And it's absolutely lovely to have you here. We have communicated on Instagram, which is really lovely. I like it when guests have had some contact with me first and they come on. Now, I explained to the listeners just a little moment before that I don't know very much about my guests when they come on. I know the very basics. I like to know the name of their partner and when they died. But I really want to hear it from the horse's mouth. Is it nice to call your guests horses? Possibly not.
Right.
I mean it in a loving way. So I'm going to let you take the microphone now, Orla, and just tell me a little bit about how you ended up in the shit show.
Yeah, and it is quite a shit show, really, isn't it? Okay, so myself and Andy met in our 20s when we were both being very feckless and not engaging with real life or responsibilities or anything like that. We happened to meet abroad. So Andy's from Birmingham in the UK and I'm from Dublin. And I went traveling with my friend. We just decided on the spur of the moment to go to South France to try and get work picking grapes and just to be there for a couple of weeks. So that's literally all I brought with me. I brought this really pathetic, hippie-looking rucksack that was so impractical. Probably had a couple of pairs of knickers, a toothbrush, and one or two changes of clothing.
A packet of fags.
Never realising I was never going to go back home again. So that's all I started with when I first met Andy.
So you stayed there?
Yeah, well, not in the south of France. I ended up in bloody Birmingham.
Oh, same.
France would be fabulous. I do love Birmingham. I'm not insulting Birmingham, but it was a much grimmer place when I moved.
It's not the south of France, is it?
No, it's definitely not the south of France, no. But that's how we met. We met like probably through drinking and getting to know each other. That the booze was really cheap. So that was the start of our relationship. And we pretty much kind of moved in with each other immediately because although where we were staying wasn't in a flat, it was in tents. Side of the roads, 3 cells.
This is giving me palpitations.
I know. I can't believe I actually did all of that back then. We even we would jump onto trains, and then as soon as the conductor found us, we'd be chucked off again. So we literally ended up wherever we were. So
feckless is a good word. We don't use the word feckless enough, and I think that does apply here, doesn't it? Very much.
Really and truly applied. And I think it was when we were in Athens, it was December, it was bloody freezing cold. We were sleeping in a tent on solid ground, which is icy. You'd think it might be warming in Athens at that time of the year, but it was awful. And our Christmas dinner was McDonald's. And I didn't eat meat, and I don't eat meat. So my Christmas dinner was a burger bun with lettuce in it and chips. And that's when we decided, let's go back for a bit of real life.
Sack the widow story. That's the saddest story I've ever heard. You're going to have to try and top that now.
I know that was just pathetic. We came back to Birmingham. I came to Birmingham for the first time in my life. We spent a few months there. We went traveling again. We worked in Cyprus. Not Cyprus. Greece, actually, that beautiful island, Santorini. Yeah, we worked there for a bit. Wasn't that romantic, though? We stayed in a cockroach, it's a disgusting place, underground.
Oh,
but
stop.
Yeah, it was hideous. I nearly had a nervous breakdown with all those
I'm
cockroaches.
nearly having one hearing about it.
But that's another story altogether. And then we went back to Birmingham again, and a lot of the time we were sofa surfing, staying between Andy's parents' house and friends of his. And I always felt they were his friends. They weren't my friends. They were lovely, but I really did not feel very much at ease because I didn't make these friends. I only knew them because of Andy. But we eventually got a flat of our own, and then I wanted to start, being a bit more serious about life. And that started off by working in Pizza Hut.
Oh, me too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was the pizza chef. I don't know how. I wanted to be a waitress, but I got pizza chef.
I don't think I've ever been as well off as I was living at home, working at Pizza Hut, and I had a bum bag because, and my tips, it was all cash. So your tips, and this bag used to be so heavy. And there was a direct correlation between, how short your skirt was and how well you did. But, you worked with what you had.
Yeah. Well, that's why I wanted to be a waitress. I wanted to make
all the tips.
And Andy then started loading trucks in the middle of the night. I don't know, but, we weren't really... Andy, when he finished school, he managed to get into a grammar school, but he was feckless during school as well, and I think he finished secondary school with an F in metalwork, something like that. He just didn't, that wasn't his thing at all. And his best friend as well, Justin. But anyway, fast forward loads of years. Oh no, I then did start. I got work in what I wanted to do, and so I was painting murals and doing all that sort of stuff in nightclubs and bars and restaurants up and down the UK.
Wow.
And then Andy went back to college because he was doing data inputting, and he absolutely hated it. It was soul destroying, and they gave him the opportunity to go to college and pick up more qualifications, which he did and ended up doing really well because of that. So he was 27, I think, by the time he did that. Okay, and then it took us quite a long time to really settle down and all of that stuff. So good few years went by, and we moved over to a different part of Birmingham. Everything seemed to be lining up, and we actually bought our first house. And it took us a while to feel ready to have children. I think I was probably about 37, 38 by the time we both felt ready and responsible enough because, like I said, we had quite a feckless background. And then that's when I discovered I couldn't have children.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, I'd been perimenopausal without even realising it, although I was feeling all the effects of it. But
you don't think at that age, do you?
No, not at all. And I only discovered that because we couldn't get pregnant. We went through the IVF journey. We were very lucky to get pregnant the first time, unbelievably lucky. And then our son was born, and we had a good first year of. We were more involved with family. We had an NCT group of ready-made parent friends, and we would do loads of stuff with them.
I love that time.
Yeah. And we were experiencing things we'd never experienced before, going to flipping soft play and would we have done soft play at that age? Probably not. He was probably still too young, but just doing stuff that we'd never done before. And before that year was out, Andy got this lump on the side of his neck. This was in, I think, November. And he immediately kind of knew this wasn't right. He went to the doctor. Doctor was great, got him sent off for tests. And we went through a whole series of so many tests. And every now and again, the word cancer was dropped in, but they would say it's probably not cancer. It's probably a cyst. But I think they were purposefully dropping in the word cancer so we could start engaging it in our brains. And we did have, the amount of different tests was crazy. Like that went on for ages. And you wonder, why don't they just do the final test first that actually tells you exactly what's going on? But we were reassured that that was not going to waste time. It was not going to, make things worse. But it's very hard to feel that way because it literally went on for months. I think it was November when Andy first went to the doctor.
That must have been incredibly frightening, because
it was.
He's done what men are often not so willing to do, and he's asked for help. They've said, we need to do tests. No, I mean, what you want to hear is it's nothing. It's just a little cyst. So already you're worried, and then it's taking ages, and then occasionally you'll hear in the C word.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that your brain's probably playing a lot of tricks on you, trying to convince you that everything's all right. But there must have been at the back of your mind that real fear. We've got a baby. What if?
Yeah, there was huge fear, absolutely huge fear, and that all the waiting between another scan or another this or another that biopsy, the fear was really massive. But I think we came to a stage where it was like, we can't live with this fear, and we don't know yet. So until we know, let's just drop the worry. And unbelievably, we managed to do that. I don't know how, but it just made life an awful lot more bearable. And then I think finally got his diagnosis in April, after, from November to April. And then the treatment, or maybe the treatment started in April. I can't quite remember.
And what was the diagnosis?
Well, that first time it was a back of the throat cancer. And we were told, if you're going to have a cancer, this is the one to have.
Yeah.
It's treatable. Once the lymph nodes haven't been affected. And when he was given this option to have some sort of robot go in and remove it, but it was a brand new treatment or way of doing it. We couldn't really quite understand it. There was loads of like ifs and buts and maybes that were attached to it. We were also given two choices of chemotherapy, and he had chemo and radiotherapy. And you're like, how can we make that decision?
I've just written this down actually, because you're so scared, and then the medical professionals who you're looking to for help are saying to you, what do you think we should do?
Yeah.
I don't want to make that decision. You're the doctors. And a lot of guests who have had a partner with cancer say that you have to become basically an oncologist. John, he would carry a laminated piece of paper with all the information on it. And you almost need somebody to translate it for you. And I've just written down the words big decisions, because those are big decisions to make for anyone.
It's a huge load to put on people. But I suppose they think at the end of the day, it's up to you.
Patient choice.
I don't have the knowledge. I don't have the wisdom. I don't have the training. I don't know which is the right decision to go with. But I think we decided to go down the traditional route in the end, because we asked about, what would you do? They wouldn't tell us.
Of course.
What's got the better odds? What all of that stuff. And then Andy had his treatment. His family were very involved in that. They really helped out, because I was working full time. I was at that stage bringing our son to and from nursery, whereas before we shared, one would pick up, one would drop off. And I was also still, trying to work on top of all of this. But we took it as, this is one that's curable. This one is fine.
It's just
a hard slog. And Andy's family would take it in turns to take him to radiotherapy whilst I was working and doing all of that stuff. So we did get through that. It wasn't easy at all, but we got through it. And I think Andy was going for one of his final checkups, I don't know how far in that would have been. And the oncologist.
It's amazing how blurred that time gets, isn't it?
Yeah, the things I remember are both Oren and me having chickenpox? Yeah, chickenpox at the same time, not being able to go see Andy when he was in hospital, being with him for his first chemo treatment, really loads of it's a blur though, lots of it is a blur. So we were at the oncologist for one of the final appointments, and he was a really positive man, real, let's get this, let's sort it out, no bullshit. And it was like, yeah, I can trust you.
Mm-hmm.
But at that very last appointment, he said, because you are quite young when you've had cancer, the likelihood is it's going to come back. Now, that ended up having a huge impact on both of us. One simple sentence like that, it stayed with us then completely.
Yeah.
Andy was absolutely worn out. He eventually got better, less tired and everything. And he went back to work. His work were incredible. He just changed job actually when Oren was born, when our son was born. And they'd waited 6 months for him to start that job. His other job made him work the whole notice period. And they were just fantastic. He'd only just started there, and then he was off for, I don't know, months on end. But knowing that support was there was lovely.
And the financial insecurity of when somebody, the main earner or even the co-earner, loses an income. Most families currently cannot afford to lose one of their partner's incomes.
No.
And that's, to be worrying about money when you're fighting for your life. I mean, it's awful.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure Andy was paid throughout that period. So we think, we probably only had about a year of pure normality, because first Andy was repairing and getting better. He, during that first bout of cancer, his ability to parent had really, vanished. He was kind of hidden in the room upstairs most of the time. He couldn't bear seeing anybody. He didn't have the energy or anything for any of that. And I was pretty much left to, or I felt like I was left to bring up our son alone. Mm-hmm. And the stress of that was huge. The stress of working, looking after Andy, looking after our son, trying to hold it all together. Pretty sure my work environment had started to become toxic at this stage. And oh God, the load of it all was extreme. In the meantime, Andy had started to withdraw. And I thought it was all about me. I thought, he doesn't give a shit. He doesn't care about me anymore. I kept trying to talk to him, trying to say, come on, let's sort this out. What's wrong? Is it me? Is it this? Is it that? But Andy wasn't a talker at all. And everything he was obviously, now I realized afterwards, he was depressed. He had this massive cloud of doom living over him. And this put massive strain, absolutely massive strain on our relationship. And it came to the point where we decided we need to not live together, because our son was witnessing a bad atmosphere. I don't think there was anything that we did in front of him, but he must have sensed, this isn't good. We still not obviously, but we still loved each other. But it didn't feel like that at the time. And in the end, Andy moved out. And you know what? I was deeply ashamed of saying that to people for quite some time. Like, everybody in our circle knew that, but in the widowed community, I felt it was a huge failing, and that would mean I didn't love him enough. I also felt like I'd completely taken away his last year of normality and living with our son and being with our son all the time. But with hindsight, I can see that we both made that decision together. You decide it's all your fault then afterwards. And I think he actually needed that space and time and quietness. And I think if we hadn't had that, it was a year actually, if we hadn't had that year of not living in the same house, I don't know how we would have coped with the second cancer diagnosis. And even though we weren't living together, we were doing everything together. We went on holiday together. Andy was here every single day, eating meals with us. We literally did everything together, apart from
You
staying.
just needed that little bit of space.
Yeah.
And I mean, it sounds like he could even have been suffering from PTSD from this. And I keep thinking back to that sentence that the doctors said, you know, there is a high likelihood of another cancer.
Yeah.
And I don't know the man, so I'm completely hypothesizing, but I just wondering whether he was almost pulling back in case. Yeah.
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 You know, my mum said that to me after Andy had moved out, and I was even involved in the house he moved into, because he had picked this. He was going to pick the first thing he saw, and I was like, God, Oren's going to be here. It's got to be lovely, Andy. And he did end up with a lovely place. But yeah, my mum did said to me, do you think after he'd died, obviously, do you think that was Andy kind of preparing? And when she first said it to me, I was like, oh, don't be bloody ridiculous. Yeah. I went through a very angry phase. But with a few years hindsight, I was like, shit, I think that's what he was doing. He was kind of, oh God, this hits. But he was kind of preparing to leave this life and having that distance from us. So it wouldn't be such a huge thing to lose. And, you know, within that year, he had started to feel ill again, and he'd immediately gone back to his doctor again. And he was turned away from the doctor every time, told he had a chest infection, given antibiotics again and again and again.
And this is with the knowledge that he's had cancer, with the knowledge that it could, you know, a cancer could come back. Oh, it makes me so angry, this.
Oh God, I was so bitter about that for so long. And I had to remind myself that he was the doctor that got Andy diagnosed the first time. I just don't understand how. Actually, I will say one thing. He did the first time Andy went to see him again, saying he didn't feel right. He's got pain in his back. He keeps coughing. The doctor did send him for a scan, actually. And it was explained to me after he died that, because I went to see his doctor fuming. And
I bet you were quite scary angry as well.
Demanding answers and everything like that. And he said that when Andy went for that first scan, it was such an aggressive cancer that nothing showed on that scan. But literally, you know, it was probably 7 months later by the time he decided to send him for a scan again. And by then, Andy was covered in cancer. It was everywhere.
So talk to me about this point then. So he's gone back to the doctor, which again, admirable. And he's been turned away, which it breaks my heart, all this, because so many people ask for help and they're not getting it. And then people then stop asking for help. But I digress. It said that's another topic. At what point, so 7 months on from him first approaching the doctor and having a scan, what prompted them to do another scan? And I mean, what was his health like and his mental health during this time? That was a lot of questions, sorry.
Yeah. He was withdrawing more and more. And even, you know, in that time, he had his own apartment. I think Oren, our son, only stayed there twice because Andy was kind of holding an awful lot back. Anytime he was here, like he'd say, oh, I can't lift my arm, I can't lift up Oren. So I'd be like, okay, Oren, let's, you jump on me, don't jump on Daddy. I'd keep saying, go back again, Andy, go back. Don't take whatever they're telling you for an answer, because this isn't, I mean, he had all the classical signs of lung cancer, like they were classic. And the doctor on the second last time Andy went to his doctor, the doctor said, you know, it's nothing to worry about. Only come back to me if you start coughing up blood. And so Andy didn't go back to him until he started coughing up blood. I don't know what the space of time was between then and when he started coughing up blood, but that's when he was sent for a scan, and it was just too late. And when Andy got the results of that scan, I was in Dublin with Orwin. We just popped over for a tiny little visit. And he was told over the phone, this wasn't COVID time or anything.
Oh, Christ.
Yeah. And Andy spent that weekend Googling what happens after you cough up blood, what's the life expectancy, because he was pretty much told there and then, that's it.
On the phone?
With nobody around him, nobody to talk to.
That's awful.
I don't understand why you would do that.
Because somebody's making a choice, aren't they, to pick up the phone to deliver that news. And I know the NHS is overstretched. We all know it.
Yeah.
But, we're talking about somebody being told that they're terminally ill. A face-to-face, or at the very least, do you have somebody with you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's no. Yeah. I feel so bad for him.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
He was sending me text messages, just saying, what time did you get home at on Monday? I didn't think anything of it. And then we got home and we were putting her into bed, sorting all of that out. And he, after Oren was upstairs, Oren never went to bed easily, but I don't know how that night maybe
weird, isn't it?
Yeah. But Andy was just standing facing me just over there and said, it's back. And I said, what? And he said, cancer. And I started crying immediately, which really alarmed him. It was like, what do I know? Why am I crying? Like, because he
You've been
already
waiting,
knew.
hadn't you, as well? That release of emotion, because you knew this was always a possibility.
I just said to him, it's not fair. It's just not fair. You can't do this again. You can't go through this again. Not realizing that this was bloody terminal. I thought it was just going through
buckle in and fight.
Let's go through all of this shit again. But this was, and he didn't. I think he had a scan. An appointment 2 days later at the hospital. And it was, I dropped Oren off. I took the morning off work, thinking I'd be going back in the afternoon. And we got in the car. And I was being all, jolly and let's make light of this. We can get through this. And he just turned around to me and he said, and Andy was a very amazing sense of humour sort of bloke who just could lighten any situation at any time with incredible wit. He had just changed so much. That light in him was just couldn't exist with all of this going on. He turned around to me in the car and he just said, don't expect good news. This isn't going to be good news. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, it's not going to be good. And I tried to get more out of him and he just couldn't give me any more information. So we arrived, we were in the waiting room. First of all, you're in a big area and then they bring you into this corridor. And we'd been in that corridor before when Angie had cancer the first time, sitting in that corridor, everybody called in, some people coming out, crying their eyes out. And you go, Jesus Christ, what news have they just had?
Yeah.
We were never that crying their eyes out people. And they left us till the very last, getting more and more anxious. Andy had told me to shut up at one stage because I just kept rambling.
The anxiety.
And he just couldn't bear it. and I get it completely. But I was like, oh, fuck, I can't do anything now to help here. I can't even talk bullshit to help. Like, I just got to sit here tight and...
with your thoughts.
Yeah. They brought us into the room. It was full of doctors, Macmillan nurses, everybody, absolutely loaded. And you're just kind of sitting there going, shit, what's going on? And I knew now it was already going to be bad news, so I was kind of ready. And oh my God, it was bad news. And Andy, it was the only time he asked them, how long have I got? And they said, well, we think about 6 to 12 months. And Andrew was like, oh, thank God, I thought I had about three months. which imagine that being good news.
I know, I was just thinking that.
Imagine. And he was kind of keeping it together and I wasn't. And me and Andy were just kind of talking to each other and not taking in anything the professionals were saying. And I was like, right, let's go on holiday. Let's go on holiday. And the oncologist just said, no, you can't go on holiday. And we were like, why not? Why can't we go on holiday? And they were saying, you need to be close by for the treatment. Just don't do it. But they never, you know what they never did? They never told us what sort of, we knew it was lung cancer and we knew it was terminal. We never knew any of the other details that anybody else knows. You know, when people say, oh, it's stage 4, la, la, la. None, we weren't given any of that information. And we didn't ask for it either, because I think we were reeling as it was.
And also, as we talked about before, you've never done this. I mean, literally, you have done it once before, but you've never had a terminal cancer diagnosis.
Yeah.
I think your brain must go completely blank. I would, it's like at the end of a, you know, when you meet any questions, you're like, no, nothing. I've got nothing.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. You just go blank. You can say.
How was Andy feeling at this time?
He was very quiet and I was the one in tears. And
how about physically? Was he in pain?
Oh God, you know what? His deterioration was so rapid. Literally in the June, we'd been on holiday to somewhere lovely in Italy, one of the islands, Sardinia, I think. And it would be with our NCT family. And this is even though me and Andy weren't living together. We were on holiday together, sharing a room together, doing everything together. And he did say once or twice that he needed to go to bed early because he didn't feel great. And I was like, oh, for God's sake, we don't go, you know, Jesus, I had no clue. I just thought he didn't want to be with me. I thought again, me. But he, you know, there's photographs of him on that holiday in the swimmers and he looks absolutely fine.
That's a scary thing, isn't it?
Yeah. By August, he had a big limp. He was in, you know, he had been in pain up to then, but manageable. But he was limping. He was withering. He was not looking good. Yeah, I was really noticing it. But he still looked, you know, relatively fine. But it was the limp that alarmed me. I was like, what's going on there? And even at this stage, they hadn't told us it had spread, that it had metastasized. I think.
I can never say that word.
Yeah, it's a hard one. I'm surprised I managed it this time. But we were taken into the Macmillan nurse's room, where she was starting to talk to us practically. And then I turned to her, I think, and I said, what about our son? Oh, how are we going to tell him? And that's the first and only time Andy's eyes welled up, and he didn't actually cry, but that's the one and only time he kind of showed that deep emotion. Yeah, that was shit. That was really hard. I remember I haven't a clue what that nurse told us. I think she said there's going to be a biopsy so we know where the primary source of the cancer is, whether it's the lung or whether it's from the previous cancer. And I think that was arranged really quickly. And after the last cancer where everything took ages to happen, it was like, Christ, this is quick. Why is it so quick? We went to the pub. We drove back, dropped off the car, and we went to the pub. And we both had very stiff drinks. We didn't know what else to do. We actually didn't know what to do. And we were waiting for Oren's. He was still in nursery at this stage. We were waiting for nursery to finish, and then we went and picked him up. I think we must have walked there because I think we had a few whiskies or something.
Frankly, I don't blame you.
Yeah.
Just quickly, because I just for my own clarity. So, Andy, at this point, you've been told that it's terminal, but there's a possibility of 6 to 12 months.
Yes.
The treatment that they were looking into, would that be with a view to prolonging his life? But there was no talk of the cancer being treated.
Yeah. You know what? Again, I don't know I don't know. I remember we had another appointment at a hospital. Really, it was horrible. We had to wait again for ages. They took us in to see somebody. And she had a screen in front of her. And on that screen was a picture of Andy's lungs. And Andy was saying, can't we cut it out? Can't we do this? Can't we do that? And she's like, no, there's nothing.
No. And that's very, the hope going, I guess, at that point.
Well, you know what? Andy hung on to hope for quite some time. I think we did go to see, he had his biopsy. We discovered it was, the lung was where it originated. It was a completely separate cancer to the last time. And we had a meeting with the oncologist. The oncologist said, well, we can do this, but, we don't think it's going to do much. And Andy suddenly remembered then that he had health insurance. And he said, well, what if I have health insurance? And the oncologist said, oh, well, then that opens up, that opens up different options. But he still didn't know if it was the right thing to do for Andy. Andy had to have a good case of survival for it to happen. And I don't know how, but he got that treatment.
Oh my goodness.
So he was being put on a program, and this time it was going to be in a private swanky hospital. Yeah. But
if you're going to be sick in a cardboard bowl, might as well do it in a private hospital, I suppose.
Yeah, same bowl, different environment. So this was in the August. All of this was in August, and then Andy went to Oren's school with me and with Oren to doing that kind of visit with your child.
Yeah.
And that was the one and only time he was in that school.
So he must have deteriorated pretty quickly. Didn't get the 6 to 12 months now.
No, he got 11 weeks.
I don't want to cover my mouth. The podcast or whatever. He got 11 weeks.
Mm.
Oh, mate.
He started chemo the day our son started at reception in school. And I asked the hospital, would they wait until after I'd dropped off Oren to school, because I wanted to be there for him. And I also wanted to be there for Andy. I wanted to be the one to take him to the hospital. So I dropped off Oren, came back home, got Andy, drove him to this little private hospital. And every ounce of that journey was painful for him. Any bump in the road, anything. It was really painful. And when we got there, I was like, sit in a wheelchair and I'll wheel you there. He refused point blank to do that.
Right.
I think because he wanted the nurses and the doctors to think he wasn't that bad, that he was worthy of the treatment. He had a nightmare they wanted to put a port in him for the treatment, but they couldn't find a vein and he was in agony. And his family then came once he started, so I could then go and pick up our son from his first day at school, and Andy's family brought Andy back to the house. And the chemo treatment almost destroyed him straight away. Amongst all of that is that whole thing of I didn't know, and I don't think Andy knew just how bad he was. I do think the chemo fast-tracked him towards his death. I remember he ended up in hospital twice because his temperature was through the roof. These are all signs of getting an infection. We had a hellish journey of all of that, being in hospital over the weekend where there's no doctors. And he had to lie flat on his back because we thought one of the signs we were told to look out for was if he got a certain pain in his back, that might mean the tumour in his spine was pushed too far and it blocked his nerves and he would be paralysed from the waist down. So we got him, called an ambulance for that. An ambulance came and took him. I then followed. He was in intensive care, I think. He had to lie on his back the whole time, was being fed loads of different pills. That gave him severe
reflux
thrush in his throat and his mouth. So everything was painful. Also, the chemo, it caused all sorts of awful stuff in his mouth. He couldn't eat. He actually got worse by being in hospital. And by the Monday when there was a specialist there, they said, you're not you're not going to be paralyzed. You can go home. I insisted they give him radiotherapy for that tumor on his spine, so he wasn't in as much pain. That did happen. Can't remember when that happened. His temperature went up again. We panicked again. He went back to hospital again. And this time they kept him on a main ward where his immunity was
non-existent, but virtually.
Yeah. He eventually ended up in a private room. And from there, they wanted to send him to hospice. Now, at this stage, again, nobody was telling us how bad this was. And he went for another scan. I don't know what the results of that were. I think I remember he went to see his oncologist in that waiting room, and he was in a wheelchair like an old man. Even when he went for that radiotherapy, when I brought him into the room where he was going to get it, one of the nurses said, "Oh, is that your dad?"
Oh.
And it was like, Jesus Christ. Andy's actually a year younger than me. And she said it in front of him. And Andy just looked so alarmed and so scared that, oh, God, it was like just awful. And all of this is in the space of weeks.
And your son is starting school. I mean, in the midst of everything you're telling me, that feels like such a small detail, but it isn't. It is. It's that bittersweet, isn't it? You want to be able to celebrate this, this huge change and support them, and you're being pulled in two directions. And I really feel for you. I really do, because you must have wanted to be by his bedside, but also to be able to be there for your son. I mean, somebody's got to do the hoovering occasionally as well. You need four of you in this situation.
It was so difficult because, Orla just started at this school. He didn't know anybody. I didn't know any of the parents.
You got no support network?
No, zero. I think two people. I knew two other parents. One was from nursery and one was my NCT parent. Both of their children were in a different class to Orla. It was unbearable. I would literally go, drop Orla off at school, then go straight to the hospital, eventually the hospice. Then I would leave Andy, pick up Orla and take him. Wasn't allowed to take him to the hospital. There was once or twice I was allowed to bring him to a room, and Andy would have to come up, wheeling everything with him to that room.
How distressing for a little boy.
Yeah. So it was actually a blessing when he moved into the hospice. But Andy knew that was a sign.
And had you had any experience of a hospice before? Because for a lot of people, especially when they are widowed young, it's not somewhere they've encountered. And
never.
I guess we all associate the hospice with the end, but a lot of my guests who have his partners have died in hospice care, they found that the atmosphere shifts completely, and they're made to feel very much part of their end of life care, very much involved. The family are welcomed, and I'm wondering if that was your experience, because it sounds like at the hospital you didn't feel well supported and informed. And I'm hoping you're going to say that the hospice provided a sort of kinder environment.
Oh, definitely. I mean, Andy avoided that day. We were told they found a bed, he could go to hospice. Andy just kept dithering and taking his time, and I was packing everything, running to and from the car park with his stuff, because we'd accumulated quite a lot of stuff in the time we'd been in hospital. I remember bumping into, I think she was a palliative nurse in the corridor, and she was trying to tell me, this is really bad. But I wasn't taking it in. She was saying, if Andy wasn't so young and if his heart wasn't so strong, he would be dead now. And I was like, oh, yeah, but his heart is strong.
It's strong, yeah.
So, that's all right then. So we're fine. Nobody told me outright. Nobody gave me blunt information ever. Even in hospice, they didn't. Because I think they were taking their cues from us. And Andy... after that first time, he didn't want to know.
Okay.
He didn't want to know any of this stuff, even in the hospice. So when we went to the hospice that first day, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place.
No, you're not. You're perfect. Don't worry.
He didn't want to go, obviously. And they asked me if I would take him in the car rather than the ambulance, because if he went in the ambulance, Andy would have to sign a do not resuscitate. And what I did, I said they were even scared to ask Andy to sign a DNR. And they took me aside, and that really kind of hit me hard. I was like, Jesus, why would we even need to do that?
Yeah.
Still didn't fully sink in. And I said, well, can I not just drive him there instead of signing this thing? And they said, yeah, you can do that if you want. So I did. I actually wheeled Andy to the entrance of the hospital, somehow got him in the car because he was
saying the getting in the car. I mean, this superhuman strength that you don't know you have. Huh?
Yeah, really unbelievably hard. The slowest drive to the hospice because of the lumps and bumps and casseroles and
I bet it sounded a bit like the kind of the Green Mile. You know, that sort of, you knew that you were marching towards his endpoint.
Yeah. But it was sold to Andy, and therefore I decided to believe it as well, that he was being sent there to build him up. Okay. So I knew he was going to die, but I just, like everybody I've heard say, it felt like I was watching a soap opera.
Yeah.
I felt like this is like a storyline in EastEnders.
Mm-hmm.
And it's happening to somebody else, and I couldn't quite relate it to us. But when we did he sat in the car park of the hospice for ages. He didn't want to get out. He didn't want to go in. I eventually managed to talk him in. His parents had gone to visit the hospice the day before, and they had told Andy, oh, it's really nice, and it's this, that, and the other. You still don't want to go to a hospice. And after he had cancer the first time, that hospice is quite close to where we live, you'd see signposts for John Taylor Hospice. And I remember always looking at them and going, no, that is our future. And I'm pretty sure Andy did as well. So to end up in there was really, really shocking. But he immediately felt safe. That was the words he used. He went from really not wanting to be there. And I think especially from coming from the hospital environment, which was awful, being woken up every, hour to take stats, and it being really impersonal, different staff, different everything.
Very rushed often.
Yeah. Son not able to come in and visit him, had to be within certain hours. And then the hospice was just so at ease and laid back. He got a room of his own. Oren could come. And so from then on, I would bring Oren after school every day. For a while, Andy didn't want to see Oren because I don't think he had the energy for him. Mm-hmm. Our child is a very, very busy child.
I got a couple of those.
Yeah. And for him, going to the hospice was all about the bed and taking
pressing
up
the buttons.
All of them, every single one of them. He treated it like it was a sports car. And Andy hated being in that bed. He would always be in that, chair that kind of tips you up and out. And, I've got a video of Oren and Andy, and Oren is just starting to learn to read phonetically at this stage, and Andy doing his homework with him or trying to teach him to read. But all of those memories are in a bloody hospice, all happened in a hospice. I think that first morning when I drove Andy back from, it must have been a different appointment, when I drove him back from the hospital at the chemo place, we drove in front of the school, and we just parked in front of the school and sat there hoping to see Oren, because that was going to be Andy's only experience. But so it was lovely that in the hospice Andy could do that stuff. And then I was like, just try it. I'll just bring Oren for an hour and see how that goes. And Andy really enjoyed him being there. And like in the hospice, they've got all toys there for the kids. Like there's
they're made to feel very welcome, aren't they?
Yeah. Oren was allowed to run all over the place, which he needed to do. And, he wasn't, I would obviously tell him off if he was being allowed outside somebody's room, but yeah.
It wasn't like being in a hospital.
No, not at all.
Your son, is it Oren, Oren?
Oraann.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I pronounced it properly. Did you say he was 4 at this
Yeah.
point? So what sort of language are you using to talk to him?
Yeah. So that was really difficult. Really difficult. I was asking at the hospice for advice on that. And they didn't know what to tell me, which I thought was really, really strange. They ended up getting this box that had a hedgehog in it and how about cancer, real child-friendly stuff, but they didn't know how to tell me to use it. And Oren didn't want to know about that. I think there was a toy in it, and that's the only thing he was prepared to have anything to do with. He knew his dad was sick. He didn't know how sick. And I've seen once or twice the counsellor at the hospice, and I was like, what do I do? What do I do? I don't know what to do. What should I tell him? And she was like, but you don't know when Andy's going to die. She said, other children have been told at a young age, and then their parent lives for another 2 years, and their child is left with that worry for 2 years. And I was like, shit, he might have 6 to 12 months. And I also think that counsellor didn't have all the details. I don't think she realised just how bad Andy was. Maybe because I said he's here to build him up, because that's what I thought. I also, Oren, we were trying to keep our routine normal. So both of us worked full time. Oren went to nursery before when we were working. And then when he started at school, he was going to go to breakfast club and after school because we were working full time. And I was trying to keep that routine going, thinking, well, I'm going to be back to work soon. And in the morning club, literally within a couple of weeks of starting school, another child said something to Oren, an older child, and something to do with death. I don't quite know what he said, but it was something about all our parents are going to die, something like that.
The joy of older children, yeah.
Yeah. And obviously he's a child as well. And didn't know anything about Oren or his dad or anything like that. But of all the children to have said it to, Jesus Christ. But then after that, Oren refused to go into into preschool club in the mornings. And we would have this awful time in the car where he just would not get out of the car. And at this stage, I didn't know why. He didn't tell me why. And it's about 3 days of driving him to preschool club and him not going. He eventually told me about some child had said something. And I was like, oh, shit. And his dad is dying. So I was like, well, we all die. All of us die sometime, honey. All of us are going to die. And we just don't know when. And that did not help matters.
No, because then do you get asked all the time, are you going to die? Yeah.
Well, but that was not a solid answer. And because now I know he's autistic with ADHD and a PDA profile, he wanted solid facts. This is when you're going to die, and it's not going to die. It's not going to happen for ages. So I tried talking around it, and it didn't work. In the end, somebody said to me, show him on your iPad picture of old people who are over 100 years of age, because I couldn't calm him down, and this is over days. And I did do that, knowing I was lying to him, because telling the truth didn't help matters at all. And that seemed to calm him, but he still never went back to that breakfast club. And then I was told, don't say anything until you know you really need to. And then things went downhill. Andy went into the hospice on the 1st of October, and he died on the 31st of October. And so we literally had 4 weeks in there, which was a long time to be in a hospice. So I did think they're building him up. And initially he was eating, and initially not much, but he was eating. And then he was just drinking 4 to sips, and then he couldn't eat at all, but he was drinking. I made the mistake at one stage, and I Googled, how do you know when somebody's going to die who has lung cancer? What do I need to look out for? Because Andy didn't want any of the staff to say anything to him, and I wanted to respect him.
But you needed to know.
No. And I was like, I don't want to know something that you don't know, and I don't want to be acting, pretending everything's okay when I don't know. And on top of this, Andy didn't want any of his family to know. He didn't want them to know he was terminal. And that was brutally hard, really, really hard, because I was keeping it from them. I wasn't talking to the doctors, so I didn't have full facts. Work were being absolute, and I'm going to swear badly here,
Crack on.
arseholes, absolute arseholes. They were layering on the pressure onto me as well. It was, it was hideous. I can't remember what I was saying now, why I got to that bit.
It's because you dropped the arseholes in and then you were overthinking whether you should have said it. Do you know, on a side note, I saw another podcast has taken out, they bleeped out swearing because apparently it really affects reach. So I'm actually having to consider bleeping out swearing on a podcast called Widowed as Fuck, which is so ridiculous. But here we are.
No. You know what though, whenever I tell a lot of people about your podcast, and I say it's called Widowed AF, and they're like, AF? And I'm like, yeah, as fuck. And they're like, oh yeah.
Yeah. When we first launched it, we went on the BBC, which is very exciting. And they were like, what does it stand for? And I was like, oh God. And I was like, well, it means as fuck. This is off air. And they were like, okay, what can we say on air? And I was like, say it's as friends or something like that. We'll figure. And we just winged it a bit. I know.
Wow.
I will try not to swear anymore.
I'm just going to look. I've been laughing, and now I'm going to drag you back into into your grief. Come on, Orla, you've had a little break.
I'll get back in there. Yes.
So, firstly, he dies on the 31st of October. I mean, Halloween. If you're gonna die, right? But yeah. So that was very insensitive. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's a fact.
The dark humour. Right?
It was a hard fact. Yeah.
So when the end, and I have written down here as well some notes, because this idea of the secrecy of you then becoming the holder of a massive secret, you know that somebody that other people love is going to die, but you can't tell them. So you're effectively by default having to lie. You're having to put on this mask, and that must have been incredibly stressful. And I bet you look back now and you just think, I don't know how I did that, but in the moment you just do.
It caused a lot of problems, because I knew it. And initially I tried to get Andy to tell him, when we first got the news. Andy's parents and his sister and brother-in-law live next door to each other. And I went into them and said, can you go into your mum and dad's? Andy's got to say something. And he just wants everybody together. And they went in, and I don't know, I think I must have been with Oren in the house waiting for that to happen. And then when I went back in, they were all laughing and joking, and I was like, this is not the atmosphere I was expecting. And then I realised that he had told them, yeah, I've got cancer again, don't worry about it, I'm getting the right treatment, it's going to be fine. And they all thought, yeah, same as last time, it's going to be fine. And I was like, Jesus, like that's any support I could have had is gone. And I felt wrong lying to them.
Yeah, and of course they're going to eventually find out, and they'll know that you didn't tell them, and that leaves you as the remaining person to deal with it.
It actually gets even more complicated than that. One of Andy's sisters not had the best of relationships with her, and she's got a lot of her own stuff going on. She started texting me late at night saying, there's something bigger going on, isn't there? There's something bigger. And I said, I'm respecting Andy's privacy here. So if Andy wants to share anything with you, I'll let him share it with you. And she would keep texting. And I said, I'm not sharing this information with you because I'm worried about you. And she said, well, if you don't tell me, then you'll definitely have something to worry about.
Nice.
And I kind of felt really between a rock and a hard place. So I told her, and I said, this can only be between us because I've already betrayed Andy now. And please don't do anything stupid now that you know this, all that stuff. And then literally a couple of days later, her twin sister, said she's told us the news. So I thought they all knew what was going on, but they didn't. And I only discovered this out like several weeks later, because one of the sisters would come. So I'd take Oren to school, go to the hospice, stay with Andy all day, pick Oren up from school, take him back to the hospice, have and Oren would have his tea there with Andy. And then I would take Oren home, put Oren to bed, and then the other sister would come and be with Oren until I could get back, whatever time in the morning that was. And we would have that crossover period where we would talk about what was going on. And God, I feel like I've got to be so careful about what I say here. But the sister who I thought didn't know, or did know, I thought she did know, was talking about, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Do you think that'll be okay? And talking really flippantly about everything. And I was in extreme stress here. And I just said, for God's sake, he's dying. And she was so taken aback. And I was like, I thought you knew this. I thought you knew this. And she was like, no, we were just told he's sicker than he's saying he is. And I was like, oh God, of all the ways for me to tell somebody this worst possible news. Oh, and she has held that against me ever since. Yeah, she has. She's thrown it in my face. And my relationship with all of Andy's, not all, a lot of his family have completely gone.
It's so sad, isn't it? Especially when there's children involved, because, like you said, it's another loss, and it's another loss for Oren. And at a time when really you would expect people to want to support you.
Yeah.
So tell me, if you will, take me to the 31st of October. What happened that day? Was it different to any of the previous days?
Well, I think 2 days earlier, Andy had really stopped eating, but he was drinking a lot. So I thought that means he's fine, because I heard they stopped eating and drinking at the end. So I thought he's drinking loads. And he was still waiting to get the all clear for another round of chemo. And he was withering away. He was getting skinnier, but his belly was getting bigger. In the meantime, we got married as well in the hospice.
In the hospice.
Yeah, 8 days before he died, we got married, and that was beautiful. But I'm pretty sure it was 2 days before. All the team came around, the head doctor of the hospice and a whole heap of them.
The death squad.
Rounds. Yeah, and they said, we're really sorry, Andy, but the oncologist called us and said there's going to be no more treatment. And literally, I saw Andy deflate. And when Donna what's her name? Donna
Ashworth, yeah.
Worked on yours, she said, there was one sentence she said about you could see hope leaving the room. And that's literally what happened. He had done everything in his power, to get more chemo, to have hope. And when they said that sentence to him, his whole body just kind of collapsed. And maybe that was 3 days before. The following morning, when I had dropped Aaron off, and from when we got married, I stayed with him every night. I went through hellish nights with him, seeing what he was going through. I feel bad. I didn't know that was happening, before then. But I was trying to be there for our son and trying to be there for him as well.
Yeah, you can't divide yourself in two. And he would have wanted you to be with Oren because he's a child. But I get it. And all of the stories I hear of terminal cancers, it's brutal and it's barbaric. And I hate that he went through it, and I hate that you had to watch the person you love go through it.
a lot of the time he was refusing, you know, a lot of the medication. He didn't want to be doled down, and he was scared every time he fell asleep that he would wake up again. And he would go through torture because of that.
Just to stay a bit longer.
Yeah. But when they said that to him, literally it was like, I've nothing left. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep on like this. And I remember, I think it was the following morning after I dropped off Orla, I went into the room and Andy was in that chair again. And he was facing the window. And it was like this part of his head was all caved in. You know, it was sunken in. And I just went, Jesus Christ, he does not look well at all. He really doesn't. And for the first time, I sought out the head doctor and said, please tell me what's going on. And she said, we think he's got about 8 days left. And, and I thought, you know what I actually thought? I thought, okay, that's good, because at least it's not Halloween. At least he can go die on Halloween. Because I just didn't want that to be an association for our son. And then I said, well, Angie's family have to know now. I can't keep this anymore. They have to know. Because the other sister that found out kept it to herself as well. And all of the family were called in. We were all put in another room. And it was such a shock to his dad in particular, and his mum at this stage had Alzheimer's, and she wasn't terrible at this stage, but, you know, not brilliant either. And people asking questions, and again, being told, we've got this, you know, maybe he's got a week left. And then I'm pretty sure it was the following day. I stayed with Andy that night before I brought Orla to the hospice. Andy was really, really weak at this stage. And for some reason, I got Orla a McDonald's on the way. He stopped eating the hospice food. And Orla was usually messing around, doing anything but staying still. And he got 2 chairs and put them face to face and up against Andy's bed. So it's like he was in the bed and Andy was in the hospital bed. And Orla was eating away on his McDonald's, and Andy was just there next to him. I think Andy's mum and dad were just sitting quietly in another part of the room. And then it was just a nice, easy visit. And then when it was time for me to take Orla home, Andy somehow managed to sit up and lean over and hug Orla and tell him he loved him. And that was the last time Orla saw Andy, and Andy saw Orla. Well, I'm so glad for that moment. I'm so glad for it. But it tells me Andy just must have known. He must have known how close he was. He had actually asked me 2 or 3 days before if he wanted to go home. And up until then, he felt safe at the hospice. But he was like, I just want to go home. Yeah. And I was trying to arrange for that. The hospice were saying, don't do it. You won't have immediate medication. You might have to wait ages for a nurse to come out. It's a really bad idea. And I said, but can we just bring him home for 1 hour? Just let him sit on the sofa and just 1 hour of normality. And they were trying to arrange it, but it never happened. That next morning, after Orla had been there, Andy'd had a bad night. Even that night, I walked him to the bathroom. And at this stage, I was helping him on the loo, and he didn't even care by now. But he walked there and he walked back. And when he sat on the bed, he said, I can't believe how tired that's made me. He said, I
I'm really bad. I'm really bad. And his anxiety was extreme. And I said, please let them give you. They put these blue things under his tongue. I said, please let them give you one of those. Please trust me and please take one because your anxiety you're just really bad. He was on a syringe driver and everything, but I don't think he ever bothered to activate it. So he took the pill and he got some rest. And I think I woke up at 6 the next morning and I was getting ready to go and get Oren ready for school to keep up that routine.
As the world keeps turning, right?
Yeah. But what had happened that night had frightened me when I took him to the bathroom. And I saw a couple of the nurses outside and I just said, can I talk to you for a minute? And I told them what happened. I'm not going to go into what happened. And she said, one of them said, let me just come in and take a look at Andy. And Andy was still on that chair. I think he'd moved over to the chair. He had, yeah. And she was watching him for a few minutes. And she said, okay, do you see how there's that funny pause between his breath? And it wasn't a big pause or anything. And I said, yeah. And she said, this is it. He's starting to shut down. And I said, no, he's not. He's got sleep apnea. He's always had problems with this and the other. He always breathes weird. And she's, this is it. And I was like, oh, shit, what do I do? And I was like, do I go get Oren? Do I stay? And I was like, what should I do? And she said, well, it's up to you. This could take days or it could take hours. And I called Andy's sister and I said, can you just come here? Can you drop Oren off to school? And can you come here, please? She did. And obviously I know everybody knew he was dying at this stage, but not the day after they were told. And the hospice nurse doctor came and spoke to both of us again. And we were just in such disbelief. And we were saying, well, do we tell everybody? And I think we decided just to wait maybe another half an hour and just be with Andy. And, the weirdest thing, Andy's a huge music fan. Once he went into hospital the very first time, this time round of having cancer, he wouldn't let anybody play music. He watched absolute nonsense on the TV, mindless stuff.
A bit like being widowed then.
Yeah, exactly. Just can't
focus.
And didn't want any of the, the thoughts and stuff. So I put on music for him. He was already shutting down. I remember like once or twice he sat up and he started trying to talk to me, but words weren't coming out. It was just, and I was so alarmed. I was like, Jesus, why can't he talk? Why can't I understand what he's saying? And I was thinking he's trying to tell me something really important here. And I don't know what it is. And I don't know how to help him. I don't know what to do. So the nurses came and gave him the medication he didn't want, which made me feel really bad. And then his sister called the rest of his family. Andy only let in his closest family over the whole time. His mum, his dad, and his 2 sisters, and nobody else. Mm-hmm. He didn't let his friends. My family nobody from my family came to our wedding. I wanted everything to be okay for him. And Andy isn't a selfish person at all, but he did not want people seeing him like that. He didn't want to see the pity in their eye. I don't even know what the main reason was for not wanting people to see him or to visit him.
It's more common than you might think, though.
I noticed it by listening to the other people on your podcast. I think he also just didn't have the energy for people.
Other people's grief, because and you must know this from being widowed, people will come to you for support for their grief. And he would have had people especially, people that barely knew him professing their sorrow. And I think some people just can't deal with that level of bullshit.
No.
Now, the more eagle-eyed or eared listeners among you might spot that this isn't quite the seamless one-take episode that you're used to. Basically, Orla and I had too much to say and not enough time. So rather than try and squeeze her episode into a limited time, we've met back again a few days later. So we were just saying, actually, that both of us were in T-shirts last time we spoke, and we're now in full winter knitwear. What a difference a few days makes, eh?
Yeah.
So firstly, thank you very much for coming back on again. I realise that this is your time that you're giving me, and I'm very grateful. And we were just discussing, in that gorgeous, dark way that widows do. We're like, right, where did we get to? Like, oh yeah, we got to the death. Did we cover the funeral? So we know we're going to be going in around about the funeral. So Orla, if you are able to drag yourself back into your story again and just talk to me about the aftermath of Andy dying, because you spoke so beautifully about who he was and how difficult it was for you. And I know there's a real stigma around relief when somebody dies, when they've been in an inordinate amount of pain, but that is a very real feeling, and that can make your grief feel very complex, and it can add to feelings of guilt. And I'm really hypothesizing here, and I should probably let you tell me yourself. So off you go.
Thank you, Rosie. Yeah. So I didn't actually feel relief.
No.
Died. I think it was so quick from diagnosis to when he died, that I was shock. I was just in so much shock initially, massive. In fact, that lasted a long time, probably 2 years, in all honesty. And when Andy died, it was lunchtime. And it was a Wednesday. I'm pretty sure it was Wednesday. I could be wrong. But it was every Wednesday at the hospice, they did a fire alarm. That Andy had been moved from the chair to the bed, and he was very not with it at all, really, except he did, even with all the drugs they'd given him, he did now and again just suddenly sit up and try and communicate, which is horribly alarming because, like I said before, I couldn't work out what he was saying. Mm-hmm. And I was like, should I bring my son here? Shouldn't he be here? And I didn't realize that, Andy's sisters had started contacting other people and were trying to get their children there, who were adults at that stage, mm-hmm. to come and say goodbye. So a lot was going on behind the scenes that I wasn't aware of. And, for his death itself, the only people that were there were the people he were allowed in, plus his brother-in-law. And we were all surrounding his bed. I had my head on his chest and my arms around his neck. And I really wanted to crawl into the bed next to him, just hold him tight. But he could barely handle any sort of touch in those last few weeks. The only thing I could ever do was just kind of soothe his forehead and his scalp. But I wish I had crawled in, because I don't think he would have noticed at that stage. But yeah, thankfully he was surrounded by us all. And I, with my head resting on his chest, I literally got to feel and hear his heart stop. And from then, I remember the hospice nurses coming in, and I saw one of them couldn't kind of hold the tears. And I remember feeling really grateful for that it affected other people rather than just us. And we had a bit of time with Andy. Other people started to turn up. Actually, before he died, literally just before, I finally, one woman, so Andy's best friend died about 9 years before Andy. And his best friend's mom was like messaging every day that Andy was in hospice. I didn't tell her he was dying until the very end. And I said, I think if you want to come and visit Andy, please come now. Because he wasn't allowing people in, like I said before. And they came probably about an hour before he died. And I let them have time, her and her partner, who was a really good friend of Andy's, and their best friend as well. They had some time, Andy on their own, and I was starting to notice, more people didn't turn up until afterwards. But yeah, and then he died. I didn't know what to do. The hospice staff kind of cleared us out of the room, and then they went in and changed him and did all sorts of stuff. And again, I wish they'd invited me into the room for that. I'm not criticising the hospice in any way, but I feel so ignorant and so much I could have done in his death. And after he had died, the hospice also immediately wanted to know who the undertakers were, or the funeral directors, whatever you call them. I hadn't a clue. Somebody suggested somebody, and they turned up really quickly, put Andy in a body bag, and were wheeling him out of the room. And I was like, Jesus Christ, he's in that body bag. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is it. He's going. I'm not going to see him again. And I was kind of following them down the corridor. I didn't know what to do. And they said, "Do you want to see him again?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And they opened the zip, and you just knew he wasn't there anymore. You just knew the second he died, it wasn't him anymore. Actually, I did, when I got to go into the room on my own, Andy, I did crawl into the bed then and snuggled myself up against him like we used to, and tried to put his arms around me. But obviously he's dead, and there's none of that holding you or any of that stuff. And that was quite difficult, but I'm so glad I did it. So glad I did that, and I got that chance to hold him as well, because I couldn't throughout his illness. He was just in so much pain. And I remember my brother-in-law saying to me outside, when I was back outside the room, saying, at least he's out of pain now. And I was like, well, he should never bloody been in. I went straight into anger. I was like, he should never have been in pain. This should never have happened. It should have been caught ages ago. He's too young, so I didn't feel that relief at all. I felt what a waste. It's just not right. I immediately felt he doesn't get to see his child grow up. He doesn't get to be involved in any of that. And I think that anger stuck with me for quite some time. And then jumping onto the funeral, I pretty much had to arrange most of that on my own. Andy's family, I remember we were all sitting here, and the funeral directors came around, and we made certain decisions, deciding on the coffin, on flowers, and God, it just felt so weird. So weird to be making these decisions. And again, I felt very removed from it all. And I think everybody felt like all the decisions had been made. People were saying, "Oh, should we do this hymn and that hymn?" And I was like, let's not have hymns.
Yeah.
And he was not a hymn person. He didn't go to mass. He didn't do any of that stuff.
Did you have the funeral in a church?
We had it in a crematorium.
Yeah.
So the service was there, and all of these decisions kind of happened. I don't remember making any of those decisions. I think I was just kind of guided in that direction. Even with the coffin, I wanted to have like one of those natural Moses thingies, caskets, and the funeral director said, "No, they're not good for the environment." I know, and I was like, "Well, can we just have no coffin then?" I just didn't see the point of him being cremated with a load of wood.
That you pay a fortune for when you've got a small child. And yet this is one of the great the things that really confuses me about a cremation and even a burial is the expectation to spend all that money on something that's either going to be burnt or buried.
Yeah. I even said to the funeral director, can we not, use the coffin for the service and everything and then let somebody else have that coffin? Because why on earth would we burn it? It means you're getting an urn full of stuff that isn't just your person. But all the music, and then that was kind of down. Oh no, Andy's dad did choose a piece of music that him and Andy loved. Oh God, it
What was it? Do
breaks
you know?
my heart every time now listening to it. Sorry,
What was it? Can you remember the name?
it was Eddie Vedder, is it from?
I put you on the spot.
Can't remember the name of the band. Pearl Jam, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But and he was singing. It was a duo with somebody else. It was called the Long Road, I think. The song is called The Long Road, and it's just so beautiful. And he chose that because it was a song they both agreed on that they liked when he was alive and well. But the words in it, it's about saying goodbye, and Jesus, really, really tough. And then I ended up calling a friend of Andy's saying, I don't know what to bloody choose for the last one. Can you help me? Because Andy loved so much music, but I'm just trying to narrow it down to what was going to represent him. And I also wanted the funeral to be a sad funeral.
Same.
I wanted everybody wearing black.
Yeah. My mum rang me and she said, people are asking what you want them to wear, because it's, the fashion now sometimes is to wear colours and celebrate their life. And I was like, black, Mum. I want everybody to wear black. And even though I didn't have a body, and we're not religious, neither of us were. Yeah. And I had it in a church because I wanted that kind of, real sense of gravitas and ceremony around it. And like you, I battled, oh my God, the song choices, because there was one song that I really wanted. And in the end, the song that killed everybody off really was Rocket Man, which you wouldn't think of. But it's a line in it about, I miss the world so much, I miss my wife. And then that was it, I was done. Yeah. But it's those songs you can't listen to them. And then, of course, they get used in a bloody advert or something, or get remixed by Dua Lipa. Thanks.
It's like, oh, God. It takes all that preciousness out of them, but it makes you get used to it. And it takes
a bit of desensitization.
Yeah, it really does. But so I had to do a lot of that on my own. And I was trying to keep the religious people happy, the non-religious,
implicate everybody.
Yeah, it was hard. And I also, I really wanted to speak at his funeral, but I was very, very kind of did not like putting myself in the spotlight at all. Really nervous about any sort of public speaking, but I wanted to do it for him. However, a well-meaning friend, and I jumped at it when she said it at the time, was you don't have to prove anything to anybody. You know how you feel. You know what he means to you. You don't have to go up there and say it. But I regret not doing it. And, I still have it in my head. One day I'm going to do it somehow, or I might do it with the widowed community for all those people who didn't get to do it. Let's just do it together.
Yeah, what a beautiful idea. Like, we all write a letter to them and stand up and talk about them. Yeah. Oh my God, that's giving me like really all goose pimples. I think that would be amazing.
Because I think there's so many people who weren't able to do it either. But I've changed so much now that I want to. But then the people who were there then are not here anymore. So it would be a very, a cathartic kind of a way of honouring him.
And in the widowed community, so you could say, you utter bastard, it's like, how dare you die on me? And they will get it. They will know that you don't think he's an utter bastard. But sometimes when you're angry with the world, you're even angry with them. I love that idea. I love that idea. Like you could do like a burning of the letters. We could wear witches' hats. I'm all in. I'm all in.
Yeah. It would be lovely.
Sorry. I was just going to quickly pull you back on the funeral planning, because this is something that comes up quite a lot when I talk to people. And it's this notion which, to the uninitiated, if you think about this, you've had somebody die, whether it be through long illness or tragically, or in your case, a combination of illness and shock, which is almost like a double barrel. And then you have to plan what is essentially tantamount to a wedding, because you have to make sure that everybody that needs to be is invited. You have to book a venue, caterers, somewhere to go afterwards.
Yeah.
You have to, probably pay for food, free bar. Lots of people, I was one of these that did, the picture projected onto the wall of the pub after. Yeah. So it's not, partly you're very busy, which is a very good distraction from the grief. And but also, what an enormous undertaking. You're suddenly charged with honouring the person that you love most in the world. And you have to plan it very quickly.
Yeah.
And often, like you say, you do it alone, but you'll do a lot of the planning alone. And then people will have an opinion. And then you feel like you're being pulled in all sorts of directions. And I just wanted to acknowledge that point, because it is something that we experience all the time. And no, I probably wouldn't have wanted somebody to swoop in and do it for me. I wanted to do it myself. It was my gift to him. But I do look back and think, how on earth did I do that? And the feeling afterwards, that kind of come down, that crash of, well, what now? Because the guests leave, what next? And I think that for me was when the reality of my loneliness landed. I wasn't, there were people around me, but you can be lonely even in company.
Oh God, yeah. I kind of, so at the funeral, my parents came over from Dublin. My sister and her family, my best friend, so a lot of my people are in Dublin. They all came over, but they all have lives and jobs and school and kids in school and all of that sort of stuff. And then obviously Angie's family were there. I felt kind of very separated from everybody at the funeral. Like I wasn't, again, it was just a very out of body experience altogether. And then we all came back here afterwards, and then everybody went home. Now, an uncle of mine happened to die a few days after Andy, who lives in Scotland, which is my dad's brother. So my parents literally were here, did the funeral, and then jumped on
off to the next one, the death tour.
Yeah, definitely, exactly. And a lot of my dad has lots of brothers and sisters. So many of them have died recently, and it's just one funeral after the other. But I was very much left the day after, left to it. And that is shocking, because you have done all of that organising and I will say, Andy's family really helped on the practical side with the funeral, but I found the emotional side of it, and I was just so reeling with the songs and all the rest. Andy's dad helped to pay for the funeral. In fact, I think he paid for it, and then I paid him back, not all of it, but I was in an absolute terror mode then about finance as well. Absolute terror.
I was just going to ask you, because I know not everybody's comfortable talking about finances, but I was left in quite serious financial peril when Ben died, and it really is only through the kindness of my family and the fact that he had a business, an ongoing business, I was able to pick up. And I mean, running it is not the term I'd use, but it kept me going. But did Andy have any sort of life insurance provision or anything like that?
Well, he didn't have life insurance because we were idiots, and
but you're not alone. You're not, and I do now. But I didn't have a will or life insurance. Ben didn't have enough to pay the mortgage off. I mean, he had some, but it wasn't enough to really help.
Yeah, well, it's funny because this house we're living in now, we literally moved into this house the day before. No, the day after Andy was diagnosed with the first cancer. And so we'd only bought the house, exchanged all the contracts and everything, not that long before then. And I remember they were trying to sell us insurance, house insurance. No, not house insurance, because you have to have that.
It is life insurance. I think now you have to have enough, or you're meant to have enough to pay off what's left, aren't you? It's a condition of the mortgage.
They didn't push us on that. They said it, and it was really expensive. And Andy said, "Do you know something that we don't?" And we didn't take it.
No. Or you could go back and kick yourselves, couldn't you? But you just don't know. You just don't know.
But what we did have was Andy had not been with his new job very long, but they did death in service.
Yeah.
Thank God for that. But I didn't know where I stood at all for for some time. I had no clue. And also with my job, I'd literally stopped working in the August, and I was just on, as far as I can remember, I was on statutory sick pay, which is sod all.
You can't live on it, can you?
No. And I really didn't know at all where we stood at all. And I was an absolute terror immediately. One of the pressures when Andy had been diagnosed was, I was thinking ahead and, oh my God, Andy, we're going to have one less income, and then I've got to make sure I'm working hard enough and I'm, keep on bringing in an income. In the meantime, I had the people I work for hassling me, saying we need a return to work plan. And I was like, I'm in a hospice with my husband at the moment. I really don't know where I stand at the moment. But that was a massive
constant
pressure.
chatter.
Yeah, because, and I really felt the load of that. If I let them down, if I can't give them an answer, then they're going to fire me. It was an extreme added pressure. I offered for them to come into the hospice and have the meeting with me there, because they wanted me to go into the office, and I was like, I can't. I'm here advocating for my husband and supporting him and making sure he gets his meds on time. And I explained my daily routine to them, and then they kind of eased back. But even after he died, I had no acknowledgement of his death. I think maybe 3 weeks after he died, I got a card that didn't even have my name in it. It just said, sorry for your loss. It looked like a card that had been found in the back of a drawer somewhere. Nobody came to his funeral. No representative.
No, nobody came from my work, actually. I was on maternity leave from my job, and I still remember that nobody came.
Yeah. And what I remember before, like maybe 10 years before in that job, somebody who had left had a heart attack and died. And their attitude then was to send the most junior person from the office as a representative. And I thought, Christ, I didn't even get that. I didn't even get that. I felt so let down by them.
I've just remembered 2 of my co-workers did come, and I feel really bad now. So that just in case it gets included, 2 did come, but they came as friends rather than representatives from the company. And I do think in circumstances like that, if you've got a kid in school, send a representative from school, send a representative from work. A friend of my parents has just died recently, and he was a much loved man in his 80s. So the funeral is going to be packed. And I said to Mum, let me know when it is, because I'd like to go. And she's like, you don't need to come. There'll be loads of people there. Yeah. And I thought, it's not about that, is it? No. It's not about that. It's just go there, show your respect. You don't have to go to the wake. You don't even have to speak to them. But if you can, you should.
Yeah. And you know what? I think that's, I've discovered that's kind of a thing in the UK where people feel they have to have known the person who died, and they have to have known him well to attend a funeral. In Ireland, it's about supporting the people who are left behind as well as knowing that person. And, that's why we usually travel to funerals, because it's where everybody is left behind, and it's also showing your respect for that person. And it means such a lot. And I think a lot less people would have come to Andy's funeral if I hadn't voiced that, actually. And I was very touched when, we drove up to the funeral, and I could see all our NCT friends standing there waiting, and that just, oh God, it really mattered.
Mine was some old neighbours from our first flat in London, and they'd come, and I just saw them and burst into tears because I'd not seen them in years.
Yeah.
And it was the fact that they'd secured childcare. They'd come, and they knew Ben for a very brief period in his life.
Yeah.
But they wanted to come and support me and the kids, and I'm going to start crying in a minute. But it felt, you need that, even if it's not a physical hug, you need that kind of metaphorical hug that you get from people. And even when you talked about the doctor or the nurse being upset in the hospice, and feeling like in a weird way glad that they were upset, because you want other people to be moved. This is a terrible, terrible thing.
Yeah.
The world needs to stop turning for just a second for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. Even our wedding, which was in the hospice, and a very understated affair completely.
I wanted to ask you about that, actually, because Again, marriage protects children when somebody dies, and the law has changed. But back then, the law will have been that if you weren't married, you would have not had any support for your son. So I was just wondering really whether that was a decision you made to secure your son's future.
Well, first and foremost, because I didn't know any of that.
Mm-hmm.
I actually didn't know.
Who does until it happens, right?
Yeah, I didn't know how much it would matter that we weren't married. But I think initially, when Andy was, so one thing I want to say is cancer totally broke us apart, but then it so brought us back together again. It was unbelievable. It brought us back together in a way that I don't think we'd ever had that depth in our relationship as we did then when we needed each other so much. And with that, when Andy was diagnosed, and the Macmillan nurse had come and was talking about making memories and stuff, and we were like, why the hell is she talking about that? Because we were like, we've 6 to 12 months, and we just didn't get it. But when she left and we were both shell-shocked, I asked Andy to marry me because I felt we'd been together 24 years, nearly 25, I think. And actually we had been together 25, and we'd never done any of the things that mark a relationship or the depth of it. We'd never, wouldn't just barely ever dated because we were together right from day one. And to me, it felt suddenly really important that people understood how
you felt about him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for our child as well. It was really important for him to see that because he'd seen us living apart. I wanted him to know that the deep love was there between Andy and me. We just couldn't bloody live together for that last year. So that was the first reason. And it actually made Andy angry because he was in deep distress. So I totally left it. And then, there were just a few weeks. And I understood, why, because it was, again, making him face his death. Me asking him to marry me. And then I started getting pressure from people telling me it's actually really, really essential that you do get married. And then I was like, well, I don't care because I'm not going to torture Andy with this. I don't care. I'll deal with the consequences. But then, funnily enough, I was visiting my doctor and trying to get another sick note for work to prove I was off for a very valid reason. And he saw what kind of a state I was in, and he said, "Are you married?" And I said, "No," and I don't care. And he said, "Please consider it again." And I said, I'm not going to ask Andy. It distressed him the first time. And he said, "Write down your feelings in a letter and shout that to Andy." And I actually did that. And I read it out to Andy one day, and it was so different to the first time. And he was like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it." I told him all the reasons why it was important to me, that I wanted to have his name, that I wanted our relationship to have been counted for something, because I do know that a lot of people who aren't married, and I feel if I hadn't been married, I would have felt like our relationship wouldn't have been taken as seriously. Yeah. And my heart goes out to everybody in that position, because only for 8 days I'd be in the same boat.
It sort of invalidates all that love and all the commitment, and particularly when there's kids involved, how that they can be deemed not to be eligible for any sort of support because the parents decided not to get married just blows my mind.
It's so cruel. It is so cruel. And I'm so glad that's been changed now. But I even when you're the only parent going into all school things, or you're arranging anything, any forms, to me, it matters now that we have the same surname.
Yeah. And logistically, it does. Things like flying and different name on the passport, it can cause problems. I know a lot of widows, they have to carry letters to prove that they are who they say they are.
And, even after Andy died and first time, I tried to get a passport for Orrin, for her son. I had to, because I was trying to get him an Irish passport, because for me to get a British passport, it costs over £1,000. And I thought traveling on 2 different passports now,
it's going to make things even worse.
Everything else, I thought I'll get him an Irish one. But in order to do that, I had to go to the solicitors with a death certificate. I had to bring my marriage certificate. I had to a whole heap of stuff I had to do to be able to do that. And it's like, oh my God, it's just a death certificate not enough to have to involve a solicitor? And it's just crazy. But yeah, so it probably would have been 10 times harder if I wasn't married, if we weren't married. So yeah, but at that wedding, so as I wasn't in a wedding dress. I didn't give a toss about that. I didn't want my focus going on what the dress would be. I didn't want to waste my time on that one. Everything else was important. I got rings. That was the biggest thing I did. And when I collected those rings, Oren wanted a ring as well. So I jumped into Claire's accessories and got him a little ring. And when we were married, I asked the people, the registrars, to include Oren as well, and he came up and got a ring on his finger too. But at that wedding, which was in the hospice, all the hospice staff came in at the beginning, and they were all lined up, almost like a little choir in rows. Oh, yeah, that really, really, really touched my heart. It really
it's touching
did.
my bloody heart over here. Stop it, I've got mascara on today as well.
I know, I put mascara on just for this.
The same.
And I'm hoping it stays on. But all of those things really mattered. None of my family were there because I didn't want to distress Andy. I didn't want it to be a goodbye kind of event. And he hadn't let anybody in up to that point, and I didn't want it to be a circus, and I wanted to again honour him.
Just to be about the 2 of you as well.
Yeah. But
well,
his
3 of
again,
you.
Yeah, the 3 of us, but Andy's immediate family again, his sisters, his parents, and his brother-in-law, the same people who were there when he died. I wish I could have had more people there, but it was a beautiful wedding, all things considered, it was so special. It was so about what it meant, without, all the fuss of arranging the funeral, of arranging a normal wedding. So yeah, I do want, the importance of how something can break you apart, but also bring you back together is just unreal. And
I think it's, I know John has a similar sort of conversation with him about, how close he and Sarah were at the end. And it's almost like you get so close and then they're taken away. It's a horrible, horrible thing.
Yeah.
Now, we have spoken a little bit about the fact that I don't even know if we've spoken about it on mic, maybe it makes off, about the fact that you made a complete career change after Andy died. Now, what prompted that? Because I know you said that it took about 2 years for the sort of anger to wear off. And I was wondering if there was a catalyst at that point that prompted you to make choices, or whether it happened prior.
There was a few things. So it like in the probably the year before Andy died, things had become quite difficult where I worked. There was a change of management. Things became quite tough.
What were you doing? You don't have to tell me where you were, but just I like to have all the pieces of the puzzle. What did you do?
I was head of creative for a hair cosmetic group, an international hair cosmetic group.
Sounds very glamorous. I'm betting it wasn't as glamorous as it sounds.
Well, it was masses of deadlines. But I did love it. I did love it. I got to do lots of really creative work. It was how the brand looked and how it was represented, and products that were on the shelves, all of that sort of stuff. But it was really, really hard work, really long hours. And when Oren was born, and I had to pick him up from nursery every evening, that changed. I couldn't do the hours that I used to do, although I did take my work home with me quite a lot as well. After he went to bed, I'd be back working again. And then Andy got ill the first time, and I had to work from home then. And that was, that was fine. It was still not under this new management. I was quite supported then. And then, a couple of years later, we did have this new management, and Andy got sick. But it was literally those 11 weeks. I felt there was a lot of gaslighting going on, a lot of me being made to feel like I wasn't adequate at my job. I also, the turnover of staff had become quite extreme at this stage. A lot of much younger people brought in, and I think these were people that they felt they could mould, pay less money.
I was going to say younger and cheaper usually, yeah.
Exactly. And I was older and not so cheap. So I really felt there was a push to get me out. And I was close to a nervous breakdown before even Andy was diagnosed. And so then when he was, and I really was feeling that pressure, they're going to use this against me. I've really got to show I can do this. Then I also saw how Andy's work treated him and the difference.
See the difference.
Yeah. And how they treated me, who they barely knew.
I've just written down because it just seems so abhorrent at the time when your husband is dying. Your fear is of the death of your husband being used against you by your employers.
Yeah.
Like, we've come a long way, but we've got a long way to go.
And you know what? It kind of was used against me because they did keep pushing then. And I think I got through Christmas and then I felt I had to address this. I had to go in and see them. I couldn't take any more time off. And this is literally 2 months after he died. And I was in such shock and trauma, but I didn't know that's what I was in at the time. And I asked to come in and meet them. They wouldn't let me bring somebody with me to support me, to be my, my pair of ears, because how much your brain cannot hold when you're in that state of shock, the widow's brain. And I also felt it was a very hostile environment. So I needed somebody with me that I could trust, and they wouldn't allow me that. So I was facing these two women, and it was an all-women run place, which is what made it even harder. Facing two women against me because the only person I could have to support me was somebody who already worked in the company, and I didn't trust anybody enough. So I told them what I needed at the moment. I needed to be able to work from home. I needed to gradually make my way back to work, to get my head around all the changes that had happened, how I was going to work out childcare and all of that. And they said, you got to hit the ground running, and you better sort out your childcare. We're not making any allowances for your everything you've gone through and the fact that you're now doing it alone. You can't work from home. We need you here.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they were brutal. And then I was like just a mess. And
no wonder they wouldn't let you take anyone with you. They didn't want this documenting, did they?
Yeah, exactly.
It is now.
Exactly. But I ended up getting a solicitor involved because I felt this can't be right. What they're doing cannot be right. And it took me a while to decide, but I decided I was not going back there. I actually did get the person who run the company, who I'd known for years and years. I did meet up with her, and she had said when Andy was first diagnosed that to come to her if I wanted to leave, and she would make sure I got a good deal. And then when I did turn to her, she was like, it's out of my hands. You're going to have to speak with this other one. And I was like, no, I'm sorry, but you're the only person I'll speak to. And then when she just kept saying, I can't help you here, I said, well, then I'm going to get solicitors involved, because what happened here isn't right. The way I've been treated isn't right. And I paid money to get solicitors involved. And we agreed on a bit of a payoff, which actually probably wouldn't have been much more than if I'd just been given my...
the normal severance pay. And
Yeah. But I felt like at least I'd stood up for myself for a change, because I'd been so undermined and gaslit and gaslighted, or whatever you call it,
But to have the
long.
kahunas to do that at a time when you're grieving, bloody good on you.
It's funny what grief can do to you.
But one of the analogies I used early on was, I felt like I was in one of those dreams, the corridors where the doors just, every time you try and open a door, it just slams, and I'd be screaming for help for my kids, screaming for help, and these doors were closing.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking that door, literally the door to your financial security, which already is precarious because you've got half the income coming in.
Yeah.
And in a time when you're so desperate for just a rope of safety, just somebody to hold out their hand to you, and they literally just went, no, you're done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus.
But, and I wasn't even getting half an income then. I was just getting statutory sick
Of course you were, yeah.
And I was coming to the end of the length you can have that for as well. So the panic was extreme. And I remember one of them walking me down to the door with me in absolute floods of tears and just saying, she said to me, you need to just really take care of yourself now. That needs to be your only concern. And I said, well, I need to pay my bloody bills as well.
God, put food in my child's mouth. Any ideas on that one? God, how insensitive.
Yeah.
So what did you do then?
Well, okay. So after that, I didn't know what the hell to do with myself. My husband was gone. The person who I'd, built my whole life around in this country with was gone. My job was gone. The support from the nursery was gone because Aaron was in a new school. I felt I literally had nothing and nobody. Also, when we moved into this house, it was, like I said, it was the day Andy got diagnosed the day before, and all my plans of being brave enough to knock on people's doors and get to know the neighbours, that went out the window. So I barely knew any of my neighbours.
Was there any point where you tempted to go back to Ireland?
Yes, many times. But I don't know, I just felt the grass probably wasn't greener.
Yeah.
I felt everything I hoped it would be probably wouldn't. I've lived here longer than I've lived there. I know my parents are older now, and I think they're living their own lives. They've already done the grandchildren thing. Our son came much later than all the others. Sometimes
you want to do it yourself, because my parents only live about an hour and a half from me. And a lot of people said, why are you going to move back to St Albans? Because that's where I grew up. I mean, partly house prices in St Albans are astronomical. So, it's bad enough in the southeast of England anyway, but it's particularly bad. And secondly, I'd built a life, and I had to carry on with that life. And it looks very different. But for me, the children were settled. I mean, they have moved since, but it felt like running home with my tail between my legs. And I don't think it is. And I think for some people, absolutely, that's where they need to be. But I left home at 17. I'd not been, in my family home. I'm very close to my family, but living together is a challenge, as in many families.
Yeah.
And so for me, it felt, my parents came and supported me, but then I had to figure it out myself.
Yeah. I think I very much felt like we were 100% on our own, and I had to find a way to make this work and not to rely on anybody, because that's, it just felt like that was all gone. And I needed to know that I could do it. And it did take me a year to get up off my arse and do anything. But I was so in shock, and I had PTSD. I was in trauma completely, disassociated, all these things, all these terminology I learned.
I know, we know so many new words now, right?
But I didn't know it at the time. I very much retreated completely into myself, and found it very hard to parent as well. At the time I didn't know my son had additional needs.
Same.
At all. And it's so different when you've got two parents, and you can take it in turns to go to the gym or to go out and socialize or whatever. One of you is always there for your child. and with a child who has needs, and the shock of, what's happened to him as well.
And your son was, I think was he 5 as well? 4. So very similar age to Hector. Yeah. And Hector, I didn't know he was autistic either. And his grief was so different to his brother's. And my daughter was too little, really, but he got very angry. My dad, who lived in the house with us for a while, he sometimes wouldn't come downstairs. And I think, looking back, he would hear a baritone voice.
Yeah.
And for a split second, and then he'd be angry with my dad because he wasn't his dad, but wasn't able to articulate it. And in a way, it kind of helped me get support for Hector because he was so angry. So he was quite challenging in school. So therefore, they assisted me to get a diagnosis and an EHCP. I was able to get one. And it's only now that I'm learning how differently neurodivergent brains process. And even for myself, it took me till about year 5 to really, really process the fact that my husband was dead. So it really has, and the other thing is we're very able to sort of compartmentalize. So when you don't see people, you can sort of lock out the feelings. Yeah. And I found that very difficult in grief, because how was I able to kind of compartmentalize it and behave in it's too complicated. And I'm thinking with poor Oren, he, as much as anything, you probably, like me, would have been slightly delayed finding out that he was neurodivergent because grief is so similar to trauma in children.
But that's what I thought it was. I really, really thought this is how he's reacting to grief. Immediately, so it happened on their first school holidays, the Halloween school holidays. And so Oren literally went back to school on the Monday after, because he'd had a week off anyway. And he'd had a long weekend off. And I don't know, I just didn't know what else to do. And plus I couldn't handle his emotions on top of my own. And I thought, routine, that's what they all say. So he went back to school. But that poor child was thrown back into an alien place because he didn't know. It
wasn't familiar yet, was it?
Yeah. He didn't know the grown-ups. And I went into the head teacher to say, I don't know what to do. Should we tell the children, shouldn't we? And she said, well, I'll announce it in assembly tomorrow. And I said, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Let me just check with Oren first if he's okay with that. And I asked him that night, and he was like, no, absolutely nobody to know. I don't want anybody to know. And I said, why not? Like, people will support you and help you if you know. And he said, no, I don't want any other child to be sad. And I think that, I think that went back to that shock he got when a child had told him at the breakfast club that parents die, and it really had an impact on him, and he didn't want to do that to anybody else. And he's been the same ever since. He
what a
will
sweetie.
Never tell people his father died. He used to get really angry with me if he heard me talking about it. Furious. And I think what helps him now is he knows that I help people by talking to them about it. But he doesn't like other children knowing, apart from, when I've gone to an event with other children.
And have you found that sort of being around, in much the way that being around other widowed people helps us, the children being around other children who lost a parent, it kind of, and I don't want to say it normalizes it, because I hate the thought of the death of a parent being a normal thing for a child. But one of the things my eldest really struggled with was that feeling of being different. And actually, one of the things I hate is that so many children are scared of being bullied about it. That's why they don't want the school to know. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's another reason Oren felt it would be used against him, and that his dad would be used as a joke. Mm-hmm. And he was saying this at like 4 to 5 years of age. And I was like, Jesus, how would he even know that? And, obviously I've since read on different forums how badly children are bullied and how it is used against them. Oh, it's just so
particularly things like suicide as well. I mean, then the things that are said to the children whose parents have taken their own life, it makes me cry. It does.
Just
horrendous. Did the school offer any sort of counselling for him?
Well, the school was awful
Mhm.
for some time. So, this is a whole other story in itself. But for the first year, they didn't tell me what was going on. So Oren was like lashing out a lot. He was hiding under tables, under the coats on the coat hangers, really distressed. He even, which I didn't find out until last year, he'd even destroyed the toilets one time, wetting all the toilet paper, turning on all the taps. Like, you can't get a bigger cry for help.
No, you can't.
And I only discovered in year one when I went in for parents' evening, and they gave out all the copybooks, and a child was allowed to self-assess themselves with a happy face, a neutral face, or a sad face. And every single one of Oren's had a sad face. Every single one, whether he'd got top marks or however he'd done, he'd a sad face, and that really shocked me. And when I went in to talk to the teacher, we didn't talk about any of his work. I just said, "Why haven't you told me about this? Like, why haven't you noticed it?" And he said, "Well, I did notice it." And I spoke to his reception teacher. And then he was telling me, yes, Oren kicks out and he hides under tables and he lashes out. And I was like, Jesus.
But why wait till parents' evening?
I was like, it's just shocking. But they saw it as normal for Oren. But it wasn't normal for Oren, because until then he'd had two parents. He was surrounded by love and people he knew. Yes, there was behaviour in nursery, but I didn't know it was.
And there almost always is in undiagnosed autistic children, because their behaviour is different. Someone just, in fact, it might have been my therapist, and she said, if you think of it, and it made me really sad actually, but you think of it as like micro traumas. So when we were kids, the material of our clothes, nobody sourced out bamboo vests for us, So you're constantly in a state of discomfort, and it just kind of gets to the point where they can't hide it. And I always say, if a child is sort of still in that real toddler phase after 5 or 6, that's when I think that's because a lot of it can be put down to toddler behaviour. My sandwich is the wrong shape. I only want to wear yellow for 6 months. Lots of toddlers do that, but it's when they get to school that the difference does start to show. But with Oren and with Hector, because of their age and because of their trauma, even when I went for his autism assessment, they sort of said, we have to be really thorough here because of the trauma, because there's an attachment syndrome, and there's so many, I've seen a Venn diagram on it, and there is so much crossover that, sorry, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent really.
No, but I agree completely. And that's why I kept questioning it for quite some time. We then went into lockdown, and so myself and Oren were at home together on our own.
That's always an eye-opener, isn't it?
Jesus Christ, massive eye-opener. And it was so hard. It was so hard, because for me, I felt like we had to keep routine going. He had to do well at school. That's the way I was brought up. And we had to do everything. I would print out every single lesson that was sent to us. I'd have it all prepared for the week ahead.
In tears by 9:15 a.m. on a Monday?
Yes.
Same.
Getting him to sit down and agree to even begin to start to do any of it, and it frustrated the hell out of me, which made it worse for him.
Then you get angry, they get upset, and to be honest with you, I can't do their schoolwork anyway, so
yeah. But I remember one day, I try and do it. We have a lovely long garden, sunshine, and we had lovely weather for that first lockdown. I remember bringing us out to the garden, trying to do it there, and I remember one day just getting a bloody bottle of gin at lunchtime and drinking gin.
Here's the remote. Off you go.
Yeah. But with that, the teachers would call now and again to check in, and I'd tell them how much I was so close to just falling apart, packing it in, and a total nervous breakdown. How Oren just wasn't doing what he should do, and I said, please, can he go in for 1 day a week, so he gets to socialise with other children. I get some respite. We both get to feel a bit of normality. And, they just kept, it was no, always no. And the desperation from me.
And this is it. All I'm hearing in your story is the no's.
Yeah.
For no,
Yeah.
we can't help you. No, we can't do this. And I don't know, see what I did there, how you kept going. But you did. And you, not only that, but you pulled yourself back up again and you had a complete transformation. And
Yeah.
I know that you are a yoga teacher. Did you do yoga before? Is this something that you got into as a result of grief?
I had dabbled in it. The first time was when I was pregnant and I went to pregnancy.
Pregnancy yoga, yeah.
A very weird experience altogether of stomping around with your legs open. Doing really weird stuff.
That's what gets you into that situation.
It was bizarre. And then maybe 2 or 3 years after Orla was born, I started doing a class now and again. And it was purely for exercise. There was none of the, breath work or any of the stuff that went with it. And then Andy died. And then I would sit there after I'd stopped going to work and just stare out the window, waiting for Orn to pick Orn up from school at the end of the day. I literally did not know what to do with myself. I was doing all the admin that took up. I just hammered that, like I totally hyper-focused.
Becomes your focus,
yeah. And getting through it. I've never been so organised ever in my life. But it gave me a focus. It kept me going. And then when that was done, it was like, oh, shit, I don't know what to do with myself. I remember my best friend in Dublin said, Orla, you've got a gym membership. Use it. Just get yourself there.
Yeah.
Just give yourself something to do. And I didn't want to, but eventually I thought, I might as well. I'm paying for it. I'll go. And I started off doing really hardcore stuff, body pump and, lots of really physical stuff, body combat. And it did help. It helped to move my body and to feel I had a body and to get the endorphins moving. And then I noticed there were yoga classes there and I thought, I'll give it a go. I'll have a try. And it was a class full of people I didn't know. They would have the lights off, so it was pretty dark, so you felt inconspicuous. I'd always be at the back. And I was terrible. My body wasn't very yielding at all.
No.
My balance was absolutely shocking. I was the person who always fell over. But then at the end, I started noticing that I could move a bit more and I really enjoyed that. But at the end, I think of the very first class and probably everyone after that, when you lie down for 10 minutes in silence. And I didn't know what we were actually meant to be doing in that silence. I just lie there going, what were we meant to do? Like, what am I meant to be thinking about? I was totally clueless. But inevitably, thoughts of Andy dying would come to me then. I think they would tell you to just be with your breath, and I would bring me straight back to Andy's dying breath. Oh, and the tears would just start flowing. And like I said before, I was numb and dissociated, and I couldn't feel the feelings at all. And that was a place where they actually came out. And I didn't like that they were coming out. But I remember speaking to a friend of mine who was training to be a yoga teacher. And she said, but you're feeling and that's helping. And I was like, God, yes, it is. But I'd just rather it wasn't in public.
Yeah.
Loads of people. And I would go in with my head down and I would leave with my head down. Didn't make eye contact with anybody. But I was starting to feel, and I was starting to feel like I was capable of more, that my body could actually do stuff that I'd no idea it could. And I wasn't brilliant at yoga or anything like that, but as a child, I wasn't sporty. I was crap. I couldn't catch a ball. I couldn't do any of that stuff. But with this, because it's not a competition and it's not about being the best, and it's just about your body and how it feels. Oh,
something else, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was the same, not a sporty kid, thought yogas were for people who ate nothing but hemp. And actually, I did the same thing as you. I lurked at the back of a few classes. I can still remember there was one, and it was a different yoga teacher who's now my favourite. And she said, I'm going to close your eyes and I'm going to come round and I'm going to place my fingers on your forehead. If you don't want me to, put your palms down. So I put my palms down, and then I thought, no, don't be pathetic. Put them back up again. And as she came round, you sort of sense the presence, don't you? She just gently pressed my forehead, and I cried. It just that human touch, that kindness that's coming from a stranger. And I love yoga. I do day retreats when I can, and I try and go at least once a week and a bit of stretching at home. But you've actually turned it into your business.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I was jobless, obviously, and clueless. Actually, I think I started freelance working, doing freelance design work at that stage, maybe. But I loved it so much and how it made me feel. And a friend, like I said, she by this stage had just qualified. And I started thinking maybe I could be a yoga teacher, but really scared of it. And you have to pay for a course to do
and
that.
It's quite expensive because I've looked as well.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm not worthy of that, actually. Why would I spend that sort of money on myself? My friend was so encouraging, and she was really, really supportive. And I barely knew her, actually. We only knew each other because our sons went to nursery together. And we just knew each other in passing. Maybe had been to one or two kiddies' parties together. And then because her son actually ended up at the same school as mine, we were going to support each other in that first week of, bringing the kids to school when they're only in for an hour or two.
Oh, yeah, that's fun.
But she was so there for me. I would go to her house, sit in her kitchen, cry while she was cooking dinner after Andy had died. And she was there when Andy was dying as well. But I've got to keep digressing.
No, that's all right. Yoga teaching.
So her husband actually said to me, it's good to have more than one
string to your bow.
Yeah, exactly. It's and I thought, you know what, it give me a practical reason for doing it, and I'm more likely to do it. And I took the leap. I invested, and bloody lockdown happened the week after the course was going to start. So a lot of it was done online, which was not the plan at all. But towards the end, we actually got together in person. But it helped me to learn how to
do yoga properly.
Online.
And I think also the principle of yoga, because you do it, but without necessarily knowing why. So that for me is one of the reasons I like to do it as much as anything, to educate myself.
Yeah.
Now, before I actually spoke to you, I recorded just an intro, and I mentioned your retreats, which are called brilliantly Wids and Kids.
Yeah.
And which makes me want to go Wids and Kids and Wids and Kids. Could you, and I'm assuming that the yoga brought you there, did it?
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about this, because I'm very interested, and I know that my listeners will be as well.
Yeah. Well, it first started when I first qualified as a yoga teacher. I started, I had joined Withered and Young at that stage. It took me a year to join, and then I was like, why didn't I join this sooner? But we had gone through lockdown, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to give something back. And I started doing a session each week with Withered and Young for free.
A Zoom session?
Yeah, Zoom. Yeah. So people from all around the country joined, and the very first one was massive. There were so many people on it, and Jesus, I'd only just qualified and I was terrified. And I was trying to get people to do all this clever stuff, and that's not what you need when you're grieving. So I kind of learned as I was going to be soft, to be gentle, to really connect to your breathing and your nervous system, to calm your whole body. That's what it eventually it turned into.
Can you do a handstand?
Yes,
headstand.
I can. I can do a headstand, not a handstand.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I got an inversion stool that I do it on as well, because it was putting a bit of pressure on my head. I spent the whole summer like a kid learning how to do a headstand.
That's exactly what I did.
But that's the beauty of it. And you're like, I'm 40 and I can do a headstand, it's cool.
Yeah, and at the age of 50, I did splits for the very first time in my life.
First thing, I didn't realise you were 50. You're looking very well on it there, Orla. I tried to do the splits, slipped, and caused myself about a 6-month recovery's worth of injury. So, yes, I'm not allowed to do the splits. But
yes,
I've
that's
got to find
something
something else next summer to do.
Yes, yeah. Well, I probably can't do it anymore because
I was going to say, go on, prove it.
No, so but and also I realised one huge difficult thing for me with widowhood was going on holiday, and getting respite. Holiday is not a respite at all. So I think a lot of the things I've created are things I really want for myself.
Same. You see something that would have helped you and it doesn't exist, so you make it.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is it.
Exactly.
This is widows doing it for themselves.
Yeah. And before we started recording again, I was saying that I have to go on school trips with my son. He's not allowed to go on his own because he is a runner. He's an escaper, and I have to be responsible if he escapes. And he's lots of other things as well. But I was in this lovely venue. It was like an activity centre, really basic accommodation. And after we came home from that, I thought, oh my God, this could work. This could be a way of getting widowed parents together and their children. The children will be kept busy with activities, and they'll be supervised.
And safe. That's a real concern when you're widowed. You become hyper vigilant about your children because you know that tragedy can strike, and it makes you even more paranoid.
Yeah. And you know what the absolute beauty of these events are? All the children that go there, so they're usually between the age of 6 and 14, to be able to do the activities. But all of them arrive there on the understanding that every other child is missing a parent as well. And so far, it's only been moms that have come. Dads are very welcome to come. I think they would benefit from it just as much as the moms do. But the children know instantly that they're all in the same boat. And on these particular retreats, none of them have a father who's alive anymore. And they don't talk about it. They don't do anything about it. But my God, the instant connection and understanding is unbelievable. And it happens every time. And I'm always scared that I say there's an instant connection.
And then it won't happen.
I'm terrified. But it happens without fail. And then the parents who are there are like, oh my God, my child's having fun. And literally in this place, they kind of give us the run of the place. And the children I think they feel so relieved and so at ease that they start playing hide and seek or tag or whatever it is.
Being children.
They're running wild around the place, and all the moms feel really safe because they're all in the same boat. And they're just like having a glass of wine when we arrive in the first evening, or a cuppa, whatever they're having, and watching their kids going mad.
Yeah.
We do have to kind of, on the second, I go, okay, some children go to bed earlier, so there's no upstairs, there's no running around upstairs, but you can run around outside. It's in the countryside.
It just sounds wonderful. It sounds absolutely wonderful. I did a couple of holidays, not organised by Way, but through Way.
Yeah.
And one was down in Somerset, and it was like little lodges, and that was incredible because, again, the children sort of went out playing. I mean, I took them on a kayak. I don't know what I was thinking, but we sort of threw ourselves into it. And then again, I did one in Tenerife, and I've stayed in contact with most of the people I went to Tenerife with, and it just gave, there was extra pair of eyes, my children was the two little ones. I could still get into a double buggy, you see, so I'd go down to the bar, they'd be sat in, one with an iPad, one with a bottle of milk, and the other one would be off playing, and I'd be able to, at the time I drank still, so I'd be able to sit and have a drink, and just knowing that I could go to the loo without having to take the double buggy, things like that, because this is the stuff you don't think about. How do you go to the toilet when you've got 3 children and you're out in public? What, you take them all in with you? Yeah. And I know that single parents have these issues too, but as a general rule, they will get a little respite from it.
Yeah.
And when it's your life 24/7, the idea of coming together like that, I want to be involved with this. I want to work with you. I think we could create something absolutely spectacular together.
Yeah. And you know what? The best thing about it is, while the children are off doing the organised activities on the Saturday, I have all the moms with me, and they get to talk about what's happened. A lot of them are hearing stories for the first time and really resonating.
there were at the last retreat, there were 3 moms there, or women, I should say, whose partner had died by suicide. And for each of them, it was like, oh, there's somebody else here
Somebody
who
gets it.
very specific type of grief. But they get to lie down, to relax, to soothe their bodies. They get to be pampered and cared for, but also to be heard and seen and understood in a way that just doesn't happen in everyday life. And to actually get together physically to do that.
Yeah, because there's magic in podcasts, Facebook groups. They're all fantastic. Yeah. But and you'll know that I've done a couple of festivals. Well, I did one festival in my garden with 25 people, and the next one was slightly bigger. And it was much like you. I wanted, the whole place was safe. I had security. I mean, it cost me a bloody fortune because I took it too far, because I so wanted everybody to be safe and to feel like they had a place and belonging. And it just, there was magic, there was some people came who'd been on the podcast, but I never met them in person. There was some people who came that, I never met before. And it was, there's something truly magical.
Yeah. Anna Bignall, who's been
Anna, yes.
Yeah. She's been to both of my retreats, actually, but she messaged me just a couple of days before your event, your festival. And I was like, oh, I'd love to go. But for me, it was too long a journey. And because when I got there, my son might decide he wasn't going in.
Well, I will tell you, actually, one thing we did do, and they didn't really use it, but next year I'm going to make it more prominent, is we had a sort of sensory tent where we made sure there was Wi-Fi and pillows. And because as a mum, as a neurodivergent person myself, and as a mum of neurodivergent children, I understand that sometimes the music, the lights, the crowds is too much. So we always make sure that there is a kind of quiet, chill out space. And surprisingly, I wasn't in there just rocking back and forth for 2 hours either. I was out in the thick of it.
And it's hard when you're on the whole time, though, isn't it?
Poor John, he was a shell of a man by the time that finished. He did a lot of lifting that day. Well, Orla, I'm afraid I am going to have to pull us to an end at some point, but I've written down 2 future things I want to talk to you about. One is about the impact of grief on a neurodivergent child and finding out that your child has SEN whilst you're grieving together, because I think we talked about that, and I kept thinking I want to ask her more, but I'm also aware that I can't put out a 3-hour episode. So perhaps we can do that. And also I do think that there's something we can have a little chat about in the future as well. But Orla, it has been truly an honour to speak to you, and I really loved speaking to you twice. In fact, I'm thinking maybe I should do this with my guests, like a part 1 and a part 2, but I don't have the time. But I really, really like you, and I think that you are we talk so much in Widowed AF and in the kind of world of widowhood about this choice, and you have 2 choices, and one of them is to give up, and one of them is to find another life and make it beautiful and chaotic and whatever it comes with it. But it's different, but not necessarily bad. And I think once you accept that as part of your healing, that's when it can really begin.
And can I just say, I'm one of those people who had very little support around me. I didn't know my neighbours. I didn't have the food train.
I wanted a food train. I didn't get a food train.
No offers of childcare. And I very much do a lot of that on my own now, because looking at getting people to, mind a neurodivergent child is not so
it's very different. And actually, I don't like to say it too much, because I don't want it to reflect badly on my children. But I felt very trapped. I couldn't go out because I'd have to lay with him until he went to sleep. And then if I went out after he was asleep, within an hour, the babysitter would call me back. And whereas now he sleeps in his own bed, he hasn't done a school residential, but I think he probably will. He's in a specialist school at the moment, but for now, and he is at peace. He's happy and he's settled, and it just that kind of understanding that comes along the way and that you learn.
That's what I'm. I've been listening to all of your story and all of your journey with your son. And I'm hoping my son gets to a SEN school for secondary.
How old is he now?
He's nearly 11, so he's in year 6 now, and I'm going through a lot of fighting at the moment to get that place. But I just wanted to say, well, all of the restrictions and all of the limitations I have, that could bring me down and completely down. And there are everyday traumas, really, when you do have a child with additional needs. so many different things that go on. But what I bring myself back to again and again and again, and a lot of this has come from yoga and meditation, journaling, sweet mother of God, it's brilliant. What I keep coming back to is, what can I do instead of what can't I do? Because if I stick with the can'ts, I will go under. So it's in all of those restrictions, it's always finding, what can I do? I now work online and work with people who are widowed. I also do a few local classes, and I do the odd retreat here and there. And that's what I can do. I've changed career to something where my brain is not going to fry.
And where you can be there for Oren, you're not commuting up into London or down to London.
I'll do all of that stuff. So it's always looking to what you can do rather than going, everything's gone.
Everything's ruined. Because that's how you feel, isn't it? I remember saying everything's gone. Everything, all hope, everything, it's gone. And it hasn't gone. It's just having a little rest.
And you do have to go through those feelings. And you
Don't make me do my bear hunt analogy again. I've burnt that one out. I've got to find a new one.
I do. And one thing I've learned so much from listening to all the other people who've been guesting on your podcast, it's brought me back to certain aspects of my grief journey, because it is a bloody grief journey, but things I haven't addressed and things I haven't looked at. And so it's been very, very helpful to go back to those places and journal about them. Thank you for what you do.
Aww.
And I know it's not easy when you're building something up by your own, because we just see you doing this. We don't see all the
behind. We don't see the behind the scenes lying on the floor crying because I've overstretched myself.
Yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And do you know what? I think all my guests say thank you at the end of it. And it's one of those things that it means so much. Those two words make everything worthwhile. And thank you for being brave enough, because the stories that you've listened to that have helped you, your story now becomes one of those. It's like when you have to tell, I don't know, children are listening, the big secret about Christmas.
Yes.
And then the older ones become the helpers. And in fact, Grief Sherpa, it was Laurie who came up with the name of Grief Sherpa. I like that.
It's a great description.
Now, before I lose you, Orla, where can people find you on Instagram and the like?
Okay. If you go to my website, which I've created all by myself, so there's probably glitches and all sorts going on there, that kind of will lead you to everything else. Yeah. So that's my name, orlablackburn.com.
So that's ORLABLACBURN.com.
BLACKBURN.com.
Oh my God. That's what I have written down as well. This is the here we go. We were back with the brains are on the dropout, and I will put a link in the show notes as well.
Can I also mention that I on Facebook, which is linked to on my website, I do a free session every Sunday night from 9 till 9:30 p.m. So it's just 30 minutes, and it's, if you've not tried yoga to help with your life, with your grief or anything else, please come along. It is free, and it's a way of trying something that might make a massive impact on your life. You do have to join up. It's a private group.
I was going to say, do you have to have your camera on if anybody's feeling a bit camera shy? No, because that's a really nice way, because it's the equivalent to going into a class with your head down, isn't it? You don't have to look at anybody. You can just lurk at the back.
And there's people who've started off at that session who haven't even been able to get out of their bed. They just looked at it. They didn't do anything. And then eventually, after a few sessions, they rolled onto the floor and started doing a few moves. And then this woman in particular I'm thinking about, she then drove to one of my in-person retreats, and it was the first time she'd driven on a motorway since her person died. And that was huge for her. And she stayed at my house to help her out. And now she's opened her own business, and she is thriving. She's doing really well, but it started with just giving herself that little bit of care and attention, because we don't feel we deserve it, do we?
And it's that body doubling as well. It's having somebody there that's to sort of say, it doesn't matter, I'm here with you.
Yeah.
And actually that's kind of what this is, I am here with you all, and wherever you are on the process, wherever you are in your grief, and even if you're not grieving yourself, you're just listening because it's an awesome podcast. I am incredibly grateful to everybody because you enable me to keep doing what I love. And if you have any questions, if you've been affected by the episode, you know where to find me. It's Rosie Gilmoss on Instagram or Widow.f. And I dare say we're going to hear from Orla again. So, but it's bye for now, Orla. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you for listening. If you found this episode helpful, hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you think someone else may benefit from this, please do share. We'd also really appreciate a quick review. It helps more people find the show. Thank you again, and see you next time on Widowed AF.